Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The ocean at dusk was restless, rolling under the last light of summer. 3 years ago, Sophia Caldwell almost died in that water. Her yacht had capsized during a sudden storm off the coast of California, and she would have drowned if not for a lifeguard named Evan Reed. He carried her through the waves, stayed until she breathed again, and then disappeared before she could even say thank you. For years she wondered who he really was. Now, she was back at that same shoreline, wearing a tailored white suit instead of a sundress, her family's hotel empire on the verge of collapse. Reporters were shouting questions, cameras flashing, the chaos of a press conference meant to save what was left of the Blue Harbor name. Her father's health was failing, and her uncle, the company's acting chairman, was about to sell everything to a foreign investor. Sophia stood under the blinding lights, her pulse hammering. When the microphone turned toward her, she managed only one sentence. "My father built Blue Harbor for the people who love the sea," she said softly. "I will not let it drown." Then a voice rose from the back of the crowd, calm and low. "What if I could keep it afloat?" The crowd shifted, and a tall man stepped forward. Tan skin, salt-streaked hair, the bearing of someone used to fighting the current. For a moment, Sophia thought her memory was playing tricks on her. It was him, the lifeguard. Older now, sharper in a dark suit instead of red rescue gear, but unmistakable. Evan Reed walked straight toward the podium and spoke before anyone could stop him. "I represent Reef Holdings. I am offering a merger that will save Blue Harbor. But there is one condition." The flashes went wild. Sophia stared at him, trying to understand. What condition? He met her eyes with that same steady look she remembered from the night he pulled her from the sea. "Marry me," he said simply. "Call it a partnership. Call it a contract. You have 6 months to decide if it can become something more." Gasps rippled through the reporters. Sophia froze, unable to process what she had just heard. Was this a rescue or a trap? Evan's gaze did not waver. "Your company needs protection, and I need an alliance. Think of it as business." His voice was calm, but there was something behind its something that felt like a challenge, or maybe a promise. Sophia's uncle leaned in, furious. "You cannot possibly be considering this," he hissed. But she was not listening. All she could see was the man who once saved her life now offering another lifeline, one she was too afraid to take. "Why me?" she whispered. Evan's answer was almost a whisper too. "Because I do not believe in saving someone twice by accident." The room erupted in questions, but Sophia's world had gone quiet. Outside, through the glass walls, the Pacific glimmered under the last orange streaks of sunset. 3 years ago, it had nearly taken her. Tonight, it seemed to be calling her back. She met his eyes once more, her voice steady this time. "All right, Mr. Reed. Let us talk about your contract." The next morning, Sophia sat in the boardroom of Blue Harbor's glass tower overlooking the Pacific. The air smelled faintly of salt and tension. Her uncle paced at the head of the long mahogany table, waving a newspaper that screamed the headline, "Heir to Blue Harbor engaged in contract marriage." "You have humiliated this family," he snapped. "Do you even know who that man is?" Sophia kept her eyes on the documents spread before her. "I know he once saved my life," she replied quietly. "And now he is the only person offering to save this company." Her uncle slammed the paper down. "At what cost?" Sophia gathered the papers, her voice calm but firm. "At the cost of keeping our people employed and our name alive." When she left the room, flashes from paparazzi cameras followed her down the corridor. The entire city wanted to know if the lifeguard turned investor was truly her fiancé. That evening, Evan arrived at her private villa overlooking the bay, his car headlights slicing through the mist. He carried a leather folder under one arm and that same unshakable composure. "You wanted a contract," he said as he stepped inside. "I brought one." Sophia looked at the folder but did not touch it. "You really mean to go through with this?" Evan met her eyes. "You need protection from the takeover. I need an anchor for the foundation I am building. This deal benefits us both." She hesitated, then motioned for him to sit. The sound of waves filled the silence as he opened the folder and laid out the papers. The terms were concise and strangely personal. "No real intimacy," she read aloud. "No interference in each other's private lives. Appear together at 3 public events. Duration 6 months. She looked up, meeting his gaze. "That is very specific." Evan gave a faint smile. "I do not make vague promises." "And after 6 months?" she asked. "We dissolve the contract," he said simply. "Unless one of us chooses otherwise." Sophia leaned back, searching his face. "You seem very confident that feelings will not interfere." Evan's eyes softened. "I have spent years keeping emotions out of business. It will not start now." For a long moment, the only sound was the ocean outside and the ticking of a clock somewhere in the house. Then Sophia signed her name. Evan followed. As his pen left the paper, thunder rolled distantly, echoing across the water like an omen. "So it is done," he said quietly. "You are officially Mrs. Reed." The word hung between them, heavier than either expected. The next day, the news broke across every network. Blue Harbor heiress marries investor to save family legacy. Commentators called it a publicity stunt, a desperate maneuver. But in the photographs, Sophia stood beside Evan with her head high and a faint, enigmatic smile. Behind the facade, she was learning how to breathe in a world where everything she did was being watched. Evan handled the press with measured grace, answering questions with polite deflections. When asked if the marriage was real, he simply said, "A partnership built on trust is as real as any love story." That night, at the newly renovated Blue Harbor Hotel, they hosted their first public dinner as a couple. The ballroom glowed with golden lights, the sea shimmering beyond the windows. Sophia wore an ivory gown, understated yet commanding. Evan, in a midnight suit, stood beside her like a man both protector and mystery. As they raised their glasses for a toast, Sophia felt the weight of his hand lightly graze hers. The touch was fleeting, almost accidental, yet it sent a pulse through her chest. Cameras flashed. Guests cheered. To the world, it looked like the beginning of a grand romance. To Sophia, it was the start of a contract she did not yet understand. When the crowd dispersed, she caught Evan watching her across the room, his expression unreadable. She could not tell if it was calculation or concern, but she knew one thing with certainty. Whatever this was, it was already more than business. Weeks passed, and the world kept spinning around Sophia and Evan's paper marriage. Every headline, every whisper in the business community carried their names. Yet behind the photographs and interviews, an awkward quiet had taken root between them. Sophia moved into Evan's coastal home as the contract required. The mansion sat high above the cliffs, its glass walls facing the endless Pacific. The sea breeze swept through the halls, carrying the faint scent of salt and cedar. Each morning she woke to the sound of waves crashing below and found Evan already gone, his side of the house perfectly in order, his coffee mug rinsed and turned upside down in the sink. He lived with military precision, as if emotions were clutter he refused to keep. At first, Sophia avoided him. She spent her days managing Blue Harbor's recovery, attending meetings, smiling for cameras, pretending everything was fine. But the nights were harder. The silence of the house echoed too loudly. One evening she wandered into the study where the lights were still on. Evan sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, going through financial reports. He looked up when she entered. "You should be resting," he said. "You have not stopped working in days." "Neither have you," she replied, leaning against the doorframe. You run your foundation, manage my company, and still find time to lecture me. A faint smile flickered across his face. I am not lecturing. I am reminding you that you are human. She crossed the room and looked at the papers scattered on his desk. Are these Blue Harbor accounts? He nodded. The takeover threats have quieted. Your decision to cut the luxury line and focus on community tourism was bold. She was surprised. You noticed? I notice everything, he said simply. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the formality cracked. The air between them shifted warmer, heavier. She looked away first. Thank you, she murmured, and left the room before her heartbeat betrayed her. The next morning, she found a note on the kitchen counter in Evan's precise handwriting. Dress formally. We have a meeting at the foundation at noon. When they arrived, the staff greeted Sophia with polite curiosity. The building was a blend of modern steel and open glass, with photographs of ocean rescues framed along the walls. A large portrait near the entrance caught her eye. Two men in lifeguard uniforms, smiling in the sun. The younger one was Evan. The other, older and nearly identical, was marked with a small brass plate that read, "In memory of Captain Reed." Sophia turned to Evan. Your brother? He nodded once. He drowned during a hurricane rescue 5 years ago. I founded Reef Foundation in his name. The air thickened with understanding. She remembered the haunted look in Evan's eyes that first night at the shoreline. You save others because you could not save him, she said softly. Evan's jaw tightened, but his voice was even. I save others because no one should die alone in the dark. They stood in silence until a staff member interrupted, handing Evan a file. Sir, these are the new sponsorship applications. Sophia glanced down and froze. One of the proposals carried the Blue Harbor logo. You applied for your own company to be funded by the foundation, she asked. Evan turned the page calmly. Blue Harbor needs liquidity. The foundation invests in sustainability. It is a clean partnership. A partnership, she repeated, half amused, half nervous. You like that word. It is the truth, he said, and looked at her for a long second. Every strong alliance starts with trust. That evening, as they drove back along the coast, the setting sun painted the sky in amber and rose. Sophia watched the reflection of the ocean on the car window and said quietly, Do you ever miss being a lifeguard? Evan's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Every day. It was the only job that ever made sense. She smiled faintly. Then why did you stop? His answer came after a long pause. Because saving one person cost me the will to save myself. The car fell silent. The tide crashed below the cliffs, rhythmic and endless. Sophia looked at him, realizing that beneath his calm surface lived a storm he had never allowed anyone to see. In that moment, the contract felt like a fragile thing, made of paper trying to hold back the sea. 2 months into the contract, the distance between Sophia and Evan had begun to blur. They still called their arrangement professional, but life had a way of softening the sharp edges. They attended charity events together, launched the new Blue Harbor Cares campaign, and smiled for photographs that made the front page of every magazine. Yet behind the flash of cameras, something unspoken had started to grow. One night after an awards dinner, their car broke down along the coastal road. The wind carried the scent of rain, and lightning flickered above the dark water. Evan checked under the hood while Sophia waited in the passenger seat, arms folded against the chill. You should go back in the car, he said. It is about to pour. And leave you to fix it alone? I am not that fragile, she replied. When the first drops began to fall, he looked up, rain streaming down his face. You never were, he said softly. They ended up taking shelter in a small lifeguard station near the cliffs, one that had been abandoned for years. The storm beat against the walls, thunder rolling above them. Sophia found an old blanket in a storage chest and draped it over her shoulders. Evan stood by the window, staring at the furious sea below. You hate storms, she said quietly. No, he replied, his voice distant. I hate what they take. She stepped closer, the flickering light catching the scar along his wrist. You lost him here, did you not? Evan nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. We were on a rescue call. The waves were twice as high as tonight. My brother went under trying to reach a capsized boat. I found him too late. The confession hung in the air like static. Sophia placed a hand on his arm. You saved me in that same ocean. You did not fail him, Evan. You honored him. He turned, and for the first time, she saw his composure break. You should not say things like that, he murmured. Why not? She asked. Because I might start believing you. The power flickered, plunging the station into darkness. Only the sound of the sea and their unsteady breathing filled the space. When the lights returned, she was standing close enough to feel his heartbeat. Neither of them spoke. Then Evan stepped back, his expression unreadable. We should go once the rain stops, he said. The next morning, they returned home in silence. But something had changed. The easy distance between them was gone, replaced by a quiet tension neither could name. In the days that followed, Sophia began noticing things she had never seen before: the way he rolled his sleeves when he was thinking, how he always stood between her and the press crowd, how he listened when she spoke, even if he never said much in return. The contract still hung over them, a reminder that what they had was supposed to be temporary. Yet every shared glance felt like a line being crossed. One evening, as she prepared for a live television interview about Blue Harbor's recovery, Evan appeared in the doorway, adjusting his cufflinks. You look nervous, he said. I am, she admitted. It is easier to face the sea than a camera. He smiled faintly. Then let us face it together. During the interview, when a journalist asked if their marriage was purely strategic, Sophia hesitated. Before she could answer, Evan took her hand and said, We made a promise to protect something that matters. I do not see how that can ever be fake. The host smiled, the cameras flashed, and the segment went viral overnight. Online, people began to call them the couple who made business look like love. Later, when they returned home, Sophia poured 2 glasses of wine. That was quite a statement, she said. Did I lie? He asked. She studied him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. You are impossible, she whispered. So are you, he replied, and for once, they both smiled without pretending. Outside, the ocean was calm for the first time in weeks. Inside, something even deeper was starting to stir, a warmth that neither contract nor logic could contain. By the 4th month of their contract, Sophia had grown used to sharing her life with Evan, though neither of them spoke about what it truly meant. Their routines had blended into something almost natural. Breakfasts together were quiet but comfortable, business meetings had become synchronized without words, and at night they often found themselves standing on the terrace, watching the lights of fishing boats blink along the horizon. The world still believed their marriage was a calculated alliance, but inside those walls it felt like something more fragile and real. One afternoon, Sophia returned from a meeting to find Evan in the backyard, teaching a group of volunteers how to operate new rescue drones for his foundation. His voice carried steady authority, and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing tan arms marked with faint scars. The sight made her chest tighten in a way she could no longer dismiss. When the session ended, he walked toward her, wiping his hands on a towel. You are early, he said. The meeting was cancelled, she replied, smiling faintly. It is strange seeing you work without a suit. And you without a crowd of reporters, he countered. She laughed, the sound light and unguarded. Touché. They stood in easy silence until she noticed a faint bruise on his wrist. What happened? She asked, reaching for his arm before realizing what she was doing. It is nothing, he said. An accident during training. Evan, she pressed, her tone soft. You do not have to carry everything alone. He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, Neither do you. That night, their foundation hosted a charity gala at the Blue Harbor Hotel. The ballroom shimmered with glass chandeliers and the soft hum of an orchestra. Sophia wore an elegant sapphire gown that caught the light like the sea itself. Reporters filled the entryway, calling their names as they walked in arm. Evan's hand rested at the small of her back, protective yet careful. Inside, she moved through conversations with polished grace, but her heart raced every time she felt his gaze on her. During his speech, Evan spoke not of profits or contracts but of courage, community, and the duty of saving what cannot speak for itself: the ocean, the people, the memories lost beneath the waves. His words silenced the room. When the applause rose, Sophia found herself clapping through tears she did not expect. Later, while the orchestra played a slow tune, Evan approached her. "Dance with me," he said. She hesitated. "People are watching." "Let them," he replied. He led her onto the dance floor, his hand firm yet gentle around hers. The world around them blurred: the lights, the cameras, the whispers. For that brief moment, it was only them. "You should not look at me like that," she said softly. "Like what?" he asked. "Like you mean it." His lips curved in a quiet smile. "Maybe I do." Before she could answer, a familiar voice cut through the music. It was her uncle, his expression tight, his tone sharp. "Sophia, a word." Evan stepped back politely while her uncle pulled her aside. "You are losing focus," he hissed. "This man is using you to gain control of Blue Harbor. Do you think I do not know his kind?" "You are wrong," Sophia said, anger rising in her chest. "Evan saved this company." "He saved me." "Saved you?" her uncle sneered. "He saved himself. Check the financial filings tomorrow. He owns more of Blue Harbor than you do." The words struck like a cold wave. "That is not possible," she whispered. "He would have told me." Her uncle gave a thin smile. "Wake up, Sophia. No one rescues you without a price." He walked away, leaving her trembling amid the glittering lights and laughter that suddenly felt far away. Across the room, Evan was speaking with a group of donors, unaware of the storm that had just begun. Sophia's pulse pounded in her ears as she watched him. For the first time since their contract began, she wondered if her uncle was right. Was she falling in love with the man who might have been planning her family's downfall all along? The music swelled, the applause returned, but inside her chest, everything went still. What had begun as a contract was now a question she no longer knew how to answer. The next morning, Sophia woke before dawn, her mind still echoing with her uncle's accusation. She tried to dismiss it, but doubt had a way of seeping in like water through a crack. Evan was already gone when she came downstairs, his coffee cup washed and placed neatly beside the sink as always. On the counter lay a small envelope with her name written in his precise handwriting. Inside was a note: "Board meeting at 9. Do not be late." Nothing more. No warmth, no explanation, only business. The drive to headquarters felt longer than usual. When she arrived, reporters were waiting at the entrance, shouting questions. "Mrs. Reed, is it true your husband now owns controlling shares in Blue Harbor? Was this marriage a takeover plan?" Cameras flashed in her face. She forced a polite smile and kept walking, though her stomach churned. Inside the boardroom, the tension was worse. Her uncle sat at the far end, smug, a stack of financial documents before him. Evan stood near the window, calm as ever, hands clasped behind his back. "We can begin," he said. "There has been a restructuring of shares to stabilize the company." Sophia's voice trembled. "Stabilize? You increased your ownership?" He met her gaze evenly. "I bought out unsecured investors to prevent them from selling to our rivals. The shares are temporary until we finish the merger." Her uncle interrupted, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Temporary control, permanent profit. How convenient." Evan ignored him. "Every transaction is documented. You can review them yourself." Sophia's heart pounded. "You could have told me," she said. His expression softened for a fraction of a second. "I was protecting you from the noise." From the truth, you mean, she replied. The meeting ended in silence. When everyone left, Sophia remained by the window, staring at the sea that shimmered beyond the glass. Evan lingered at the door. You should trust me, he said quietly. Trust has to be earned, she answered. He hesitated as if wanting to say more but finally turned and left. That evening, she returned to the coastal mansion alone. The wind howled against the windows, and the ocean roared like it had something to say. She poured a glass of wine, but it did little to steady her hands. On the dining table, she saw a folder Evan had left open. Curiosity overrode caution. She stepped closer and froze. Inside were blueprints for a new property development and expansion of Blue Harbor's resort line, but under the project name, the ownership listed was not Blue Harbor, but Reef Holdings. Her heart dropped. The same man who had promised to protect her family's legacy was preparing to absorb it. The front door opened. Evan entered, his shirt still damp from the rain. He saw the file in her hands and stopped. You should not have gone through that, he said. Then you should not have hidden it, she snapped. Was this your plan all along? Rescue me, marry me, and take everything my father built? It is not what you think. Then tell me what it is, she demanded. For the first time, he raised his voice. I am trying to save what your uncle is destroying. This expansion keeps Blue Harbor alive. Under your name, she countered. Not ours. The silence between them cracked like thunder. Evan's jaw tightened. You once said you believed I saved you for a reason, maybe this is it. No, she said, tears burning her eyes. You saved me because you cared. Or I thought you did. She set the folder down and stepped back. I was foolish to believe this was more than business. Evan reached for her, but she moved away. Do not, she said. Please, do not. He stood there, rain dripping from his coat, the distance between them heavier than any storm. Sophia, he whispered, everything I have done was to keep you safe. Then you should have started by being honest, she replied, her voice breaking. She walked past him, her heels echoing across the marble floor. The door closed behind her with a sound that felt final. Outside, the storm raged across the coast, waves crashing against the cliffs as if mirroring the chaos inside her heart. Somewhere behind her, the man who once pulled her from the sea now watched helplessly as she walked away into the rain, leaving him to drown in his own silence. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed was worse. Days went by without a word between Sophia and Evan. She moved back into her old apartment near downtown, leaving the mansion empty except for the sound of the ocean. The press caught wind of their separation, and the headlines shifted from praise to speculation. Contract marriage crumbles, one read. Was it ever love? Asked another. Sophia ignored them all. She threw herself into work, spending long nights at the office, but exhaustion could not quiet the ache inside her. One evening, as she reviewed reports in the dim light of her desk lamp, her assistant entered with a hesitant look. Ma'am, you should see this. On the screen, a breaking news segment played. Her uncle was holding a press conference, declaring that Blue Harbor would merge with a rival corporation, effectively dissolving the company her father had built. Sophia felt her chest tighten. He cannot do that, she said. He already has, the assistant replied. The papers are being signed tomorrow. That night, she sat alone in her office, staring at her father's photograph on the wall. I tried, she whispered. I really tried. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. When she turned, Evan stood there, rain-soaked, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. You should not be here, she said coldly. I came to warn you, he said. Your uncle is selling the company to a developer with a history of laundering money. If that deal goes through, you will lose everything and so will your employees. Why do you care? She demanded. You already have what you wanted. You still think this was about power? He asked. Sophia, I invested in Blue Harbor to protect it, not to steal it. Your uncle forged documents to make it look like I took control. I have been trying to stop him for weeks. She hesitated, disbelief warring with the memory of the man who once pulled her from the sea. You expect me to believe that? Evan took a folded file from his coat and placed it on her desk. Here is proof. Financial transfers, signed under his name. He is framing me. She opened the file with trembling hands, scanning the papers. Each signature, each timestamp, matched her uncle's. The truth sank in like cold water. Why did you not tell me sooner? She whispered. Because I wanted to fix it before you got hurt, he said quietly. But I was too late. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the city outside filled the silence. Finally, Evan said, there is still time. If we expose him before the signing tomorrow, Blue Harbor can be saved. Sophia looked at him, her anger dissolving into something raw and fragile. And after that? She asked. After that, he said, you never have to see me again. The words cut deeper than she expected. She swallowed hard, then nodded. All right, she said. Let us stop him. Evan met her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, there was trust, tentative, but real. The storm between them had not ended, but at least they were facing it together. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, softer this time, like a reminder that calm always comes after the breaking. The morning of the signing arrived with an eerie calm. The air outside the Blue Harbor headquarters was thick with anticipation, the sky painted in a dull silver that promised rain. Sophia and Evan arrived separately, each carrying the weight of what had to be done. Inside the lobby, reporters waited like vultures, their cameras poised for scandal. Sophia ignored them and walked straight to the conference hall, where her uncle stood before the board, smiling like a man who had already won. Sophia, he greeted smoothly, I was beginning to think you would not show up. I would never miss the moment my father's company is stolen, she replied. He laughed, shaking his head. You always were dramatic. Before she could respond, Evan entered the room, tall and composed, carrying a briefcase. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. You are not welcome here, her uncle snapped. You are no longer part of this meeting. Evan set the briefcase on the table and opened it. I think you will want to hear what I have to say. From inside, he pulled several folders and a flash drive. These are the original financial documents and recorded emails proving that Mr. Caldwell, he nodded toward Sophia's uncle, has been embezzling funds through the rival corporation he claims to be merging with. Every transaction was made using falsified signatures. Gasps echoed around the room. Sophia's uncle turned pale. This is nonsense, he shouted. Fabrications from a con artist. Evan calmly connected the flash drive to the projector. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of emails with timestamps, authorizations, and bank transfers all under her uncle's name. One video file opened, showing him meeting privately with the rival CEO, discussing how to sell off Blue Harbor assets under false pretenses. The room fell silent. Sophia's uncle's voice trembled. You cannot prove this was me. Sophia stepped forward. Yes, we can. She turned to the board. I authorized an internal audit last night. The results confirm every word of what you just saw. Security officers entered as the board members whispered among themselves. Her uncle's composure crumbled. You set me up, he spat. Sophia's eyes were steady. No. You set yourself up the day you betrayed our family. The officers escorted him out while reporters swarmed the hallway, shouting questions. Sophia turned to Evan, her voice soft but firm. You could have ruined me with this. Instead, you saved everything my father built. Evan looked exhausted but relieved. I did not do it for Blue Harbor, he said quietly. I did it for you. For a moment, neither of them moved. The board chair cleared his throat. Mrs. Reed, the company is yours to lead. You have our full confidence. The meeting dissolved into applause, but Sophia barely heard it. She walked to the window where the rain had begun to fall, each drop hitting the glass like a heartbeat. "It is over," she said. Evan joined her, his reflection beside hers in the window. "It is a beginning," he said. She turned toward him, her eyes searching his. "You kept every promise you made," she whispered. "Except one," he said, voice low. "The part where I promised not to feel anything." The truth hung between them, quiet and undeniable. Outside, thunder rolled over the ocean, but this time it sounded like applause. Weeks later, the ocean was calm again, and so was Sophia's heart. Blue Harbor had survived the storm, both the literal one and the one that nearly tore it apart. Her uncle faced legal charges, the rival corporation withdrew, and the company began rebuilding under her leadership. The press now called her the woman who turned survival into strength. Yet behind every success stood the man who had quietly walked away once the battle was won. Evan had kept his word. The day after the board meeting, he handed her the signed transfer documents returning all his shares of Blue Harbor. "It is yours now," he said simply. "It always was." Then he left before she could find the words to stop him. For weeks she told herself it was for the best. The contract had ended, the deal fulfilled, and their paths were free to diverge. But every evening, when she stood on the balcony watching the waves roll against the shore, she found herself remembering his voice, the warmth of his hand at her back, the quiet strength that had held her together when everything else was falling apart. One morning, she visited the old lighthouse overlooking the harbor, the same place where he had once taught her not to fear the sea. The foundation had recently finished restoring it into a rescue training center. Inside, she found a small plaque on the wall that read, "For those who learn to save others and themselves." Beneath it was a framed photograph of the ocean at sunset and at the bottom corner, in his handwriting, a note, "Some tides never end." She smiled through tears, realizing that he had left a piece of himself there, in every wave and every light that guided others home. That evening, Blue Harbor held its annual charity gala, the first under her name. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, and guests filled the space with laughter and music. Sophia stepped onto the stage to deliver her speech. "This company was born from the sea," she said, her voice steady. "It has weathered storms, loss, and doubt, but it stands today because of the courage of those who believe that compassion is not weakness. It is strength." The crowd applauded. When she stepped down from the stage, a familiar voice came from behind her. "You always did have a way with words." She turned and there he was. Evan, in a dark suit, standing near the entrance as if he had been there all along. For a heartbeat, she could not move. Then she walked toward him, her smile trembling. "You came back," she said. "I never really left," he replied. "I just needed to be sure you could stand without me." "And now?" she asked. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver whistle, the same one he had carried the night he saved her life. "Now I would like to stand with you," he said. "No contracts, no conditions." Tears welled in her eyes as she took his hand. "Then let us start over," she whispered. The crowd around them seemed to fade as he leaned closer, his voice barely above a breath. "To new beginnings," he said. "And to the calm after every storm." Outside, the ocean shimmered under the moonlight, its rhythm steady and sure, like a promise finally kept.